Welcome, everyone. We're here for Hollywood 101, the financial, legal, and creative aspects of literary adaptations. Now, at the Authors Guild Foundation, we do a lot of education on publishing contracts, publishing industry, but it's no secret that many writers dream of having their work turned into a movie or TV show. So, joining us today is Eddie Gamarra, a veteran in publishing and entertainment with a wealth of experience in book packaging and book scouting for production companies. Eddie has some straight talk for us about how Hollywood operates and what to expect if your book or IP is licensed for production. Cheryl Davis, General Counsel of the Authors Guild, who is herself a playwright with TV credits, will moderate the talk today, and she can speak to the Guild's model film and TV option contract, which lays out our recommended language and negotiating tips for option agreements. This is part of the Business Boot Camps for Writers series, which covers the bases of the legal and business side of authorship. Thank you to Penguin Random House for their support of this programming, and thank you to the Institute of American Indian Arts MFA and Creative Writing program for collaborating with us on programming content. We're planning a couple of more book-to-screen panels with IAIA in the months ahead. And now I'll welcome Eddie Gamarra, the VP of Literary Affairs at Paramount Global Kids and Family, which covers Nick Jr., Nickelodeon, and the Awesomeness brand. He works across live action and animated film and television, coordinates with legal teams to acquire books and other IP for development and production. And prior to that, he was literary manager at the Gotham Group and also worked at what is now known as Alloy. In short, Eddie has a ton of experience representing books, authors, agencies, and imprints for the book-to-screen adaptation process, and we're very glad to have him on this panel today. Before we begin, one important disclaimer. Please, we ask that you do not post or tweet specific details that Eddie shares with us today, although you can post about this presentation itself. Every author's situation is different, and tidbits taken out of context might not really apply to an individual's case, so it would be better to refer someone to watch this whole video later on. Thank you. And now I will turn it over to you, Cheryl Davis, General Counsel of the Authors Guild.
Thank you, Johnny, and thank you, Eddie. For those of you who are not familiar with us, the Authors Guild is the oldest and largest professional writers association in the U.S. We count over 14,000 members at this point in a variety of genres: history, journalists, fiction, nonfiction. And our job is to help writers protect their rights. And we advocate for writers from the business sense. We advocate for them to promote their rights and professional interests in various areas, including copyright, freedom of expression, fair contracts, and most recently, artificial intelligence. And as Johnny said, one of the things that we're trying to do is expand upon our members' knowledge base with respect to how this transition and translation from the page to film and TV works. So I'm going to ask Eddie to speak to us about it. Eddie.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Want to thank Cheryl and Johnny and the Authors Guild for the invitation to participate today. Also, thanks to Penguin Random House and the Institute of American Indian Arts MFA program. Thank you for sponsoring this valuable programming. So last year, I won a membership to the Authors Guild at a Latinx Kidlit Book Fest silent auction that was held online. And I was fascinated to begin to see the emails circulating online by members of the Authors Guild who were discussing Hollywood. They were discussing the role of producers, the role of scouts. And I saw that there was a bit of misinformation and a bit of skepticism in the online dialogues. So I was very happy to organize this informational session. I'm going to try to cram a lot in here, and I speak fast. I'm from New York, but the video will be available after the presentation, so you can listen to it at half speed and take notes. Again, as a caveat, this presentation is not officially on my behalf as an employee of Paramount Global, but rather my background of working in the publishing and film and TV business for almost 25 years. The information I share is general and not necessarily specific to each of your individual cases. Always have a team of professionals to help you in your specific case. And the Authors Guild is one of those resources that you can always go to. So I want to cover kind of four basic areas. First is how Hollywood is structured, because I saw a lot of misinformation, and it's a very confusing world because the vernacular, the professional language of publishing and the professional language of Hollywood don't always align. And sometimes the same terms mean two different things. One of the most fundamental problems is, what is a literary agent? Because a literary agent in publishing is a book agent, a person who sells a book to a publisher. typically at a 15% commission. But in Hollywood, a literary agent represents directors and screenwriters. So the same term means two different kinds of reps. Talent agents represent actors, but talent is a term that we also use to refer to screenwriters and directors. So we're beginning to see the muddiness of our vernacular. To be clear, literary agents in Hollywood and talent agents typically work at a 10% commission model as well. I was not a literary agent. I was a literary manager, which is yet another term that people use to describe their representation. Historically, in Hollywood, agents cannot be producers, whereas managers can. Managers is a growing field. Literary management is a growing field. And one of the differences is that managers can produce. So when you are signing on with an agent, when you're signing on with a representative, you have to be very mindful of what exactly is that person doing for you. Are they selling a book to a publisher? Are they selling a book to Hollywood? So just bear these kinds of things in mind. There is another kind of category of representative. It used to be called a co-agent, what we might call a book-to-screen agent, or nowadays more often you hear the term media rights representative. And a media rights representative sells books to talent like actors and screenwriters and directors. They sell books to producers. Sometimes those producers are individuals. They sell them to production companies, and those are often individuals who have a small staff and sometimes have a little bit of money. They sell those books to financiers, and those are companies with money to invest, but those companies are not typically the production company. They're not typically the company that makes it. They finance the project. You'll see the term studios. And so what's the difference between a production company and a studio? Production company is typically the company that physically makes the film or the TV show. The studio is often responsible for distribution and marketing. So they kind of work hand in hand. Another term you'll hear a lot is a distributor. What is a distributor? Well, those are companies like the big film studios, Paramount, Sony, Warner Brothers. But sometimes they're smaller companies. You've seen a lot of buzz last year in the Oscars for Everything Everywhere All at Once, produced by a company called A24. Then you also hear a term called platforms. Platforms are like basically the streaming platforms, Netflix, Apple Plus, Paramount Global, etc. So there's a lot of terms that authors and publishing people don't necessarily understand the nuances of, and to begin to really wend your way through the dark forest that is Hollywood, I encourage everyone to really look at the language of Hollywood and how it compares and contrasts to the language of publishing. Media rights agents are your gatekeepers. They are the people who are selling the books to the film and TV business. Again, they're often called co-agents. They're often called book-to-screen agents. Literary managers can also be agents in the sense of they're functioning in the same way, but again, they have different legal definitions. Agents have a fiduciary responsibility. They can't be producers. Literary managers often can produce. So that's one of the differences. Of course, we can't go without saying entertainment lawyers. Entertainment lawyers rep everyone and everything. Be mindful, authors. Entertainment lawyers can be a really, really helpful, valuable add to your team. They typically charge by the hour, often in 6-minute increments, or they charge typically a 5% commission of the deal. Because book-to-screen deals are so complicated and take so long, I have seen authors who end up financially underwater because their legal bill outweighs how much they're getting paid. So try to make sure that your lawyer's on a commission basis. So who are the other players in the business, right? We talk about producers and we talk about executives. Again, producers are typically the people that actually make the films and the TV shows. They're the ones who see the project from beginning to end. When you watch the Oscars, who wins the Best Picture Oscar for Best Film? The producer. The producer is the entity who sees the project through. They're often the party that secures the rights to IP, like books. Executives typically work for the studio or the distributor or the platform. And they're, again, typically paying for the development and production of that film or TV series. And they work in tandem with producers. Sometimes the execs at the studio, the distributor, or the platform are the ones optioning the rights, and sometimes they are on set. But producers and executives typically function in a collaborative way, but they have different sort of goals. Again, in the spirit of sharing terminology here, when you get to know a production company, you're going to hear terms like a CE, which is a creative executive, or a DOD, which is a director of development. These are kind of the insider acronyms that we use in the Hollywood business. And for you authors, if you're getting into this business, begin to learn those terms. Executives and producers read the book. They help find the screenwriters who are going to adapt the book. They help hire the directors that are going to direct the adaptation. They work with casting directors to identify and secure actors. So the producers and the executives work together to actually develop, pre-produce, produce, and then distribute and market your projects. So what the hell does a scout have to do with any of all this? Every major media company has a media rights executive or a literary affairs executive. I'm the VP of Literary Affairs at Paramount Global Kids and Family. It's a fancy way of saying we scout for books and other kinds of IP. Netflix, Apple, Amazon, Sony, Universal, Paramount Global, we all have literary affairs executives looking for material. Scouts in publishing find books for agents to rep and for publishers to acquire. Scouts in Hollywood find books for the talent, the producers, the production companies, the financiers, the studios, the distributors, and the platforms to acquire and develop and hopefully produce. And scouts, unlike reps, are not typically paid on a commission, they're paid on a retainer basis. So that's kind of a lay of the land of who are the players and some of the vernacular that we have to master in order to understand the intersections between publishing and Hollywood. So when can Hollywood option a piece of material? What's the life cycle of a book, for example? Every author that I've ever talked with or represented or worked with, it starts with an idea. An idea could be a title, it could be a tweet, it could be an outline, it could be a sample chapter, it could be in any form. Your idea begins to take shape with words on the page. The ones who are unrepresented try to find an agent to sell their idea to publishing. How do you find an agent? You make a list of comp titles, you research who reps the authors of those comp titles using Publishers Marketplace and Publishers Weekly. Then you research each of those reps on their agency website. You look at that agent on their socials. You listen and read to interviews and podcasts. And then you begin to research those reps through your own personal connections. You want to vet those agents, all right, before you're selling to a publisher. Be sure to submit to your prospective agent in the manner described in their instructions. You have to follow it to the letter. It is a way of vetting potential author clients. Book agents, if you don't follow the book agent's instructions, they may not look at your stuff. So please, please do your deep research and then follow the submission query instructions. One of the things that I've noticed about authors is that, and this is true of screenwriters and directors as well, even actors, we tend to view our relationship to our representatives in a passive way. We use passive language to describe our relationship. We say, I got signed by that agent. I always like to flip the script on that and change the perspective from passive to active. You're hiring an agent. You're the CEO of your own company. You want to begin to build a team around you. And if you treat your career as an author from that perspective, you're going to see this passive to active shift have meaningful changes in how you begin to lay out your business plan, your sales strategy in terms of getting your material to publishers. But if part of your creative goals are to have your book optioned for film and television, you want to begin vetting agents at the earliest of stages to see, do they have an in-house media rights rep? Do they have outside relationships with co-agents, with media rights reps? Who do they use to sell? What's their track record of selling into Hollywood? And most of that information is actually publicly available on sites like Publishers Marketplace, on PW, and on the internet and more broadly. So you have to do your research. If you want to get into Hollywood, start by thinking, what's the right book agency for me? For those of you who are already repped, begin to talk with your book agent about developing a business plan for your media rights. Do you want to have a stage production? Do you want to have a film? Do you want to have a TV show? Do you want to have merchandise off of your book? You have to talk to your reps about this kind of stuff. So agents go out to editors with a manuscript or a proposal. Scouts begin to get access to your material as early as the submission from agent to prospective editor. The editor and the agent may close a deal. The scouts are getting their hands on the material from inside the publishers or from inside the book agencies. The agent will announce a deal being closed on Publishers Marketplace. Studio execs, producers, scouts all read Publishers Marketplace deal announcements. When reviews come out of your book, again, scouts, execs, and producers are all looking at those book reviews. They're also beginning to follow you online. They want to track your socials. They're looking at your website. They're looking at your X accounts. They're looking at your Instagram. We want to know what's the buzz like about your book. We want to know if you're going on book tours. We're tracking you and your material at the very earliest stages available. We're also looking at your sales figures, where most of the bigger companies will have subscriptions to Circana BookScan, and we're looking at sales figures week by week. I also always have to cross-check sales figures with the book agents, but sales figures are important to Hollywood. We want to know that the thing is either going to become a success, it's on the path of being a success, or it's already successful. And the metrics of success in Hollywood and publishing are very, very different. Part of my job as a literary affairs executive in-house is to translate the metrics of success from publishing into the metrics of success of Hollywood. In Hollywood, we're looking at, executives who want the next Harry Potter. Well, that sold hundreds of millions of copies. If you're selling hundreds of millions of copies of a book, you're in the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of all authors. If you're selling 5,000 copies of a book, that's much more normal. So I have to always condition and contextualize the sales data to the Hollywood community, right? Because most people in the Hollywood community don't understand the metrics of success in publishing. But these are important facts, and this is how we're tracking your material. And at any step along the way, in terms of the life cycle of your book, Hollywood can make an offer. And you may say, well, the book's not done. Why would you make an offer? One thing to bear in mind is culturally, publishing is voice-driven. It's execution-driven. You are submitting typically sample chapters, a full manuscript very often. The publisher knows that when they sign that book, they're going to print it. They're going to distribute it. It's a business of certainty. Once a deal is done, 99% of all books are going to actually get printed. Maybe 1% of books don't actually make it to market. Hollywood is kind of the opposite. Hollywood is idea-driven. It's developmental. We're playing with ideas over the course of many, many, many years. When I was a rep, I sold a book that was never written to a studio. I sold books that were nonfiction humor books that literally just had a one-sentence quippy comedy line per page, but the title is what got people excited. Even as a buyer, we've bought books based on the title because that title captured the big idea. So one of the things I always encourage publishing people to learn about is the term high concept. Your book is more attractive in Hollywood typically if it has that high concept, if it has that catchy title, if I understand what the movie or the TV show is going to be sort of right out of the gate. Think about Boss Baby. You see the term Boss Baby and you see that little kid in the three-piece suit holding a briefcase. You know the tone, you know the world almost immediately, right? And that's really what what Hollywood tends to gravitate towards. We also love great roles, castable roles. Where can we get that star actor into that role? We also love big worlds that we've never seen before. We love pulling the curtain back on subcultures that we thought we knew, but we never really understood. Think about The Sopranos. How many mob movies, how many mob shows are there? But The Sopranos pulled the curtain back and let us into that subculture in a unique way, right? So these are some of the things that we think about when looking at material. And what kind of material are we looking at? For me, as a scout, and I cover Nick Jr., animated TV, animated features, live action film and TV for Nickelodeon, but I also cover a brand called Awesomeness, which does a lot of YA and young adult content. I'm looking at board books, picture books, middle grade, young adult, new adult. I'm looking at adult fiction, nonfiction, memoirs, magazine and newspaper articles, comic books, graphic novels, webtoons, podcasts, plays, toys. Hell, look at Barbie, biggest movie in Warner Brothers history, based off of a toy. Board games, video games, even corporate brand names. There was a BlackBerry movie, for Christ's sake. The fact that any kind of IP could be adapted into something is very freeing. You have to think in a playful way. How can I take this thing and make it into this other thing? That's the alchemy of adaptations. And this is true for traditionally published. This is true for self-published. There are plenty of titles that have been self-published, that have been adapted. You know, Andy Weir's The Martian, for example. Legally Blonde was a self-published book. Nonfiction titles. You know, Paramount, one of Paramount's biggest YA movies of all time, Mean Girls, was based off of a sociology book about American female adolescence called Queen Bees and Wannabes. So how do you take something that's not narrative, that has no cast of characters, and transform it into a compelling movie or TV show? Again, this is the alchemy of adaptation. There are books that have even gone out of print or are about to go out of print that have been adapted. I sold a book called Nerve, which was a YA thriller that was about to go out of print. It ended up becoming a New York Times bestseller after Lionsgate released the movie. So at any point in the life cycle of a book, Hollywood can step in and begin to develop a relationship. So how do I work day to day? What does a scout do every day? How do we choose a book? How do we work with authors? And here's what I do for a living. Every day, I'm reading Publishers Weekly, Publishers Marketplace, the bookseller out of the UK. I'm reading reviews. I'm reading best of lists. I'm reading newsletters from publishers, newsletters from bookstores. I'm reading rights guides and catalogs. I look at Edelweiss every day. I'm trying to track new material. Every week I talk to and meet with authors, illustrators, editors, subsidiary rights executives at publishing companies. I meet with book agents. I meet with media rights agents. I talk to other scouts. I connect with producers. I talk to librarians. I go to local bookstores and talk to the booksellers. Hey, what's selling? What's working? What are kids looking for? I meet with folks domestically and I meet with folks internationally. If you look at London, Frankfurt, and Bologna, 3 big marketplaces, there's a lot of information flow. There's a lot of material flow. And as a scout, I want to be in the middle of that flow so I can grab that title that I feel is right for us. Every month I go to book signings, I go to conferences, I go to conventions, I attend online events. When I read a book, I also read the acknowledgement section. So I know who else to look at, who else to meet with, who else to track. I read scripts that are based on books. I meet with screenwriters and producers who have the rights to books. One of the questions that authors ask a lot is, well, how do I get discovered then by a scout? Can I present to a scout? Well, a deer doesn't necessarily want to put themselves in front of the hunter, but a scout wants to know what's going on, right? So the best way to be discovered is be present. Be present in the trades, be present in at events. I encourage people, think about your title, have a great title with a high concept, have a great cover. Hollywood thinks in terms of visual storytelling. We think of images, we think of that movie poster, we think of that banner ad on a subway or a bus stop. We think about who's that castable lead star against that incredible title, where the audience, the viewer, gets the idea in 30 seconds or less. How do we vet stuff? Well, I start with myself. What's my taste? What do I love? What gets me excited as a reader? And what stimulates my imagination for me as a potential viewer? But I also have to think about the taste of my coworkers. I know that my one coworker loves rom-coms, whereas my other coworker loves thrillers. So when I find a piece of material that I really like, I want to strategize with that coworker and get them excited because I know that that's their taste as well. But taste is only part of the equation. The company's brand identity is massively important. And this was true for me as a seller. I had to know the difference between what did Apple want versus what Disney wanted versus what Sony wanted versus what Warner Brothers wanted. Each company wants different things. Think about brand identity. Nickelodeon, it's bright orange. It's a happy, fun, warm glow. It's a kid-driven comedy brand, but it's also green slime. It's messy, it's gross, it's weird. Nickelodeon is very different than Disney in many ways. So if you're a children's publisher or children's author, if you're a children's book agent, you have to think about, well, what Disney does is different than what Nickelodeon does? Does my material fit the brand identity of those companies? Disney traffics in wish fulfillment and fairy tales and fantasy and pixie dust. Nickelodeon traffics in everyday kids in extraordinary circumstances, but celebrates the ordinary messiness of a kid's life. So you have to think about the company brand. You also have to think about what that company's slate needs. If we have 7 vampire projects, we don't need any more. We may need a witch project. We may need a werewolf project. We may need a zombie project. So what are the slate needs? When I look at the different teams with whom I work, they have a long list of projects in development, and they may be finding within that long list certain trends. So they want to not repeat those trends. They want to try and break out of those trends and find things that are new and what's missing from their slate, but remains still on brand. That still gets them personally excited. You also have to think macroscopically, what's missing from the marketplace. If you're seeing every single streaming platform doing spy shows, maybe you don't want to have a spy show. Maybe you do. You have to think about, what are you creating that's going to fit into the market? So what gets you excited? What feels right for your company in terms of brand identity and slate needs? And then also, where's the market at? Okay. So what happens when you actually do a deal? The Authors Guild has a lot of resources about exactly this. I'll cover a couple of points here that I really want to drive home. The first is the legal issue of chain of title. In publishing, the author owns the copyright to the work and licenses certain rights to a publisher. You, the author, license to the publisher the right for them to publish your book, and perhaps in certain formats, hardcover and softcover, audio, digital copies, large print, braille, whatever. But typically a good book agent is reserving a bunch of rights. They're reserving your media rights. They're reserving your merchandising rights. And so the author in publishing tends to be in the catbird seat. They are the owner of the copyright and control those ancillary or subsidiary rights. Now, there are cases where sometimes the author just keeps the copyright and grants those subsidiary rights to the publisher. And there are certain times when the author grants to the publisher the right to be the exclusive agent for the subsidiary rights. So, for example, I used to represent Soho Press. Soho Press was the agent for the media rights to Mick Herron's Slow Horses series. So I did the deal on behalf of Soho Press, but in collaboration with Mick Herron's reps in the UK to sell it to a British production company who then sold it to Apple. So if you haven't seen Slow Horses on Apple, go check it out. One of my favorite shows. There are additional layers of exceptions here. If you're doing a picture book or a graphic novel, there might be a split rights situation where the author owns copyright and subsidiary rights, and the illustrator owns the copyright to the art and their own subsidiary rights. And they may each have their own separate reps. So if you're going to Hollywood, you want to make sure that your chain of title is solid. You want to understand who is owed what if you sell it somewhere. You want to make sure that your reps are always working in sync. So chain of title is hugely, hugely important. That's an essential legal thing that you have to pay attention to out of the gate from the very beginning of your hopes and dreams in Hollywood. Think about chain of title. Who owns what? On the financial side, everyone thinks people who get Hollywood money get rich. Again, it's the 1% of the 1% of the 1% who get rich. The money is not big. Again, we're a developmental industry. We're an idea industry. We're a playful industry. We're going to mitigate our risk by paying as little as possible up front for as long amount of time as possible to play with that idea. Once we want to make the thing and pay the purchase price, then you can get a hefty check. But it may not be a game changer. You may find that you're actually making more money with books than you are with Hollywood. So tell your friends and relatives, just because you did a Hollywood deal, you don't have liquid capital. You're not rich. You don't have a ton of cash under your bed. Dispel that rumor that everyone gets rich with a book option. It's not how it works. In publishing, look, you get front end and back end. You get an advance against future earnings. And that's your front end. When you earn out your advance, you get royalties. That's your back end. You can negotiate for other kinds of back end, like a New York Times bestseller bonus, which is contingent on certain sales thresholds. But in publishing, it's pretty straightforward. Okay. In Hollywood, your front end is your option. And that's at a small amount of money that's paid up front against a purchase price that's a much larger amount of money that's only paid when they're actually going to begin to shoot the project. when they're actually the first day of principal photography, when the director's on set and yells action, that's the day you get that big check. One of the things to be bearing in mind about language here is royalties versus residuals. There was some confusion in the author community. Royalties are monies paid to rights holders like authors. There are industry standards for those royalties, but those rates are up for negotiation typically. Residuals are back-end monies paid to performers, not authors. And those rates are often determined by labor unions like SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Guild. So please don't worry about residuals. Unless you are a member of those labor unions in Hollywood, you're not getting residuals, you're getting royalties, okay? That's part of your back end. You can also negotiate for bonuses like theatrical box office bonuses. If you hit $300 million in the theatrical box office worldwide, you may be entitled to an extra $7, okay? So there are these option purchase deals, right, where you're getting paid a small amount of money applicable to a larger amount of money down the road. But there's also something called a shopping agreement or a free option where there's no exchange of money. And all you're doing is the author is granting this other party the right to begin to develop and shop around your project. And unlike an option purchase deal, which is like a 65-page contract, the shopping agreement can only be a page or two. Sometimes you'll get a paid shopping agreement or a holding fee where you're getting a small amount of money as a sign of good faith. And again, there's limited paperwork. Again, it could be a 1, 2, 3 to 5-page document. But the contract is not pre-negotiating all the many different nuances that a traditional option purchase deal would be containing. You know, the studio deals are very, very long, very, very dense. And that's why you need reps to help guide you through this language. The other thing you have to think about is, if I'm getting money from somebody, what am I giving them? Am I transferring my copyright to them? No, you are transferring your right to let them do an adaptation. One of the things about Hollywood is screenwriters convey copyright to the studio. They work as work for hire. So the company is the author of the screenplay. That is a fundamental difference between the two industries. And that's one thing that authors don't always understand, and they have to understand out of the gate. So please understand that the copyright works differently in these industries. You want to limit the grant of rights to your publisher. You also want to try and limit the grant of rights to your studio, to your producer, to your platform, to your distributor, to your financier. The problem is publishing is accustomed to a limited grant of rights. Hollywood's the exact opposite. When you do a deal with a studio or a production company, typically you are conveying all rights, title, and interest in and to all of your characters, locations, themes, etc. in this book and any sequels, prequels, spin-offs, in all formats, in all technologies, in all territories, in all languages, in all known and unknown universes. It's very expansive, the grant of rights in a Hollywood deal. Your rep's job is to narrow it down as much as possible. But because Hollywood is a global business, they typically need all languages, all territories, et cetera, et cetera. One thing to note about option money and terms, each format, each medium has different standards. If you're doing a deal for an animated feature, animated features typically take a minimum of 6 years to develop. So you're maybe offered 3 option periods of 24 months each. Whereas for a live action TV show, which is a much faster process, you may do a deal for 2 12-month periods. So bear in mind that the format in which your book is being adapted will alter some of the fundamental terms, like how long is my option period, and how much of the option money is applicable towards the purchase price or not. Again, your team of pros will be able to walk you through this in more detail. One of the things to highlight is growing interest in merchandise. In the kids business, it's always been essential. Children's publishing, children's media, you're going to see plush dolls, you're going to see puzzles, toys, games based off of film and TV. Merchandise based off of TV and film is very big business in the kids world. In publishing, less so. But again, going back to the idea of who's your agent and building that team around you, if you want there to be merch based off of your book, you need to work with your book agent to find a licensing and merchandising agent. And those people can have a commission range from 20 to 50%. In publishing, it's not the norm. It's very rare that you see merch that authors will do. Only the biggest titles tend to have merch. In Hollywood, you want to try and negotiate what's called a separate pot for merch. So especially if you're selling a kid's book where there might be plush, toys, video games, whatever, based off of your adaptation, you want to try and get a little taste of that. But here's an interesting nuance. If you look at the credits of a show, the creator of the show is not typically the author. You got a based on credit, but you're not the creator of the show. The showrunner is the creator of the show. The screenwriter, director, and producer are the creators of the movie. So they typically get a gross percentage if they can negotiate it. Whereas the author, upon whom their work is the source of the adaptation, will get a net definition. But even getting a separate pot for merch can be considered a win. So again, this stuff is very complicated. The back end can get very complicated. But if you're in your creative heart hoping to have merch, make sure that your book agent, your co-agent, your film and TV agent, your rep understands the world of licensing and consumer products as well. Every author is going to ask about involvement. What is my level of involvement? At the very least, you're going to negotiate for based upon the book by source credit. Sometimes publishers can also ask the author to bake in a published by Simon & Schuster or published by HarperCollins credit. It's a hard fight to win, but it can happen. Approvals versus meaningful consultation. When I was a rep, I used to tell my clients, unless you are Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, the biggest authors, you're not going to get approvals. The buyers are spending millions of dollars and they don't want to necessarily be hijacked by an author's approval process. But because we all want to have great relationships with the original storyteller, we'll often bake in a meaningful consultation clause. And so you're going to be involved in a conversation as the project is in development. Okay. Sometimes your reps can negotiate a producing credit or an executive producing credit, but you have to be ready, willing, and able to render meaningful services as a producer or an executive producer. And if you don't know what that means, go read interviews from authors who have produced. Look at Jenny Han, for example, and her experience on her show on Amazon. Her being a showrunner, her being a producer was a very different kind of career, a very different kind of creative process, and a very different kind of spiritual process versus just selling her books outright and getting a based upon credit. So if you have a desire to control, don't go into Hollywood. If you have a desire to demand, don't be in Hollywood. Stick to publishing. Publishing gives the author far more control, far more ownership. Okay, last section in the last 6 minutes. What happens when a project gets into development hell? Okay. The most common complaint I hear from publishing people is, we never hear from Hollywood what's going on. Well, here's why. There are a couple of key benchmark moments in the development process, right? Searching for a screenwriter, that takes time. Getting a list of writers that feel like they're the right people to adapt this work takes time. Getting the material to those writers takes time, subject to their availability, subject to their interest. Then they have to read your book. Then they have to come up with a pitch. This all takes time. Finding a writer can take a week and a half if you're lucky. It could take a year to 2 years. It's a very slow and steady process. Once you find that writer, you got to close a deal. The deal may not close. Once the deal is closed, the writer has to go and start writing. Their pages that they write may not satisfy you as a producer or as a studio exec. They may do not a great job adapting the material. So all of this takes a lot of time, but those are kind of the key benchmark moments. Once you have a script, then you got to get a director. That takes time. Once you get a director, you start looking at locations and cast. All of that takes time. So it's a slow process. There was a statistic I heard. The average movie that made it to screen took 8 years to make it to screen. So patience is a virtue. A lot of authors will say, well, why can't I adapt it? Well, remember, a book and a script are very, very different things. I joke around about word count. A half-hour TV script is 7,000 words. A screenplay for features can be about 24,000 words. The average adult book is over 120,000 words. How do you cut down your novel into something that has more white on the page than black ink? Right? Writing a screenplay is like writing haiku. You have to convey the most compelling imagery and the most compelling emotions in as few syllables as possible. You do not have the real estate that a novel gives you. So you have to think about these kinds of things. And if you want to be a screenwriter, take classes, write 3 or 4 scripts, be able to show the studios and the producers that you've done the work and that you can deliver on the page. But if you've never done it before, it's not actually to your benefit to try to adapt the work necessarily, because there's been too many instances over too many years where the authors end up not being able to transition to this other art form, because it's a different medium, it's a different art form. When you are stuck in this process, your agents should be in communication with the producers, with the studio execs, to get you the information that you need. And if they're not, you need different reps or you need different producers. Always make sure you negotiate for tickets and transportation to your premiere, if there is a premiere. I can only tell you how many times people don't negotiate for that, and seeing the heartbreak of an author not being able to attend the premiere of their own adaptation is absolutely heartbreaking. You have to bear in mind that they are different industries with different vernaculars, different processes. With publishing, there's a holy trinity. There's the author, the agent, the editor. That's typically the most important relationship. In film and TV, look at the end credits of any movie that you've watched. Look at the end credits of any TV show that you've watched. 13,000 people are in the end credits to most movies. They all played some role in that adaptation. And the money is much different. There's much more at risk. The studios and the networks are spending millions of dollars to make the thing, to make the adaptation, and then they have to spend millions more to market and promote it. The risk is very high. If you look at how many books are published a year, it's a very substantial number. But if you look at how many movies and TV shows are released each year, it's a very, very slim number comparatively. Something like 700 movies were made last year. That's not that many compared to how many books were published. We have to be very, very selective because the cost is much higher and therefore the risk is much higher. So the Hollywood industry is built in such a way to mitigate that risk as much as possible while also trying to execute the best adaptations. Half of all Best Picture winners were based off of books or short stories. When you look at the biggest box office movies, 95% of them were based off of a book or a comic book. IP, stories, novels are essential to the lifeblood of Hollywood. But when those industries meet, it can be a muddy quagmire in a dark forest. So make sure you have reps at your side. Make sure you have the team at your side to guide you through this process. I know we've covered a lot. Time is out for the presentation. We want to go to Q&A, but I hope this has been a good kind of catch-all of some of the basic issues.
It has been, I think, speaking for everybody, a wonderful encapsulation of a lot of the issues that that you're going to encounter as an author whose work is being adapted into film and TV. And I wanted to bring up again a reminder that we have, the Authors Guild has our model film agreement, which is available on our website. And one of the things that we do is, in addition to some sample language so you can read it and understand some of the principles behind these agreements, behind the terminology, we've got commentary explaining, okay, this is what this provision means. This is why it's relevant to you. And these are the kinds of things that you should be looking for in these types of agreements or in these types of provisions. And again, to go back to the little disclaimer at the top, in our commentary, we state that our provisions and suggestions may not be the best for all circumstances. So we recommend that you review your specific contract with the Authors Guild or with other counsel and make sure that your contract addresses your own issues and concerns. Because one of our key things is authors need to understand their rights. The better they understand their rights, the better they can protect them, and the better we can help them protect them. And Johnny, let's go to the questions.
So we wanted to talk about scams for sure. So
Yeah.
a lot of authors are approached by people claiming to be producers, companies offering to help shop your story if you pay them to develop a screenplay. What are the red flags? And maybe what are the green flags when it is legitimate?
Sure, sure. This is actually one of the topics that I noticed on the online forum for the Authors Guild. A lot of authors were talking about this. Two things. Never, ever pay for anyone's services. Never. And number two, if anyone says, I guarantee, they're a damn liar. Okay. No one can guarantee anything. All right. So if anyone's asking for money, you're done with them. They say the word guarantee, you're done with them. But here's how to vet people. Very simple. Look them up on LinkedIn. It's a professional forum, right? If they're scammers, they're probably going to be nixed pretty quickly. Look them up in the Hollywood trades. And there's 3 resources that I'll share with you: Deadline Hollywood, Hollywood Reporter, Variety. Look them up on the websites of those 3 trade sources. See if they're mentioned. If they're not mentioned at all, they're probably not legit. Okay. The other thing is you can also use IMDb, or even better yet, IMDb Pro, if you can pay for the subscription, and look at them there. Hollywood, unfortunately, has a history of being an insider business, and people take advantage of that insularity. But more and more and more, there's transparency, especially in the digital age where everyone has a social footprint. You have to do your deep research, look them up, vet them, ask them for referrals. If they appear in these resources, like the trade, if they appear in IMDb, they're probably more real than not. But if they don't appear in these resources, thank you, but no thank you. Very simple.
I was just going to add to that, is sometimes people are frauds and will use names of people that they are not actually are. So they even use names of legitimate people. For example, we had an email from somebody saying, hey, Lee Daniels people approached me. No, they did not. And what we do, and what you can do yourself, is check and see who the real people are behind Lee Daniels company, etc., and reach out to them. And because that's what we do when people come to us. Like, well, I think it was last week or so, we got an email forwarded to us from somebody who had been approached by TriStar. And I reach out to TriStar saying, we're presuming this is a scam, but as a courtesy, we let you know. And the staff at TriStar emailed their member back to say that, hello, thank you for letting us know. No, this is not us. Do not trust these people. But if it's a name you recognize, that should be a big red flag. And you can also check and make sure who it is.
The world that we live in Hollywood is much more litigious than in publishing. And part of the reason why we have a culture of litigation is because we are an idea-driven business, right? Like the uniqueness of an idea is a hard thing to prove legally. People are stealing each other's ideas all the time. Well, yes and no. Thieves don't last long in this business. But what I will say is every agency, management company, every production company, studio, financier will have language about not receiving unsolicited submissions. So how do you break in? By having a rep, or by having a referral and then signing an NDA. You want to make sure if you end up signing an NDA that you're not granting your rights in the NDA. Some companies have very expansive NDAs where you are conveying rights. Always have a lawyer check your NDAs. Go to the Authors Guild, have them check an NDA, Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. You have to be very protective. But the best way in is really through having a rep. So do you want to go to bigger questions or topics, Johnny?
For sure. So some people are curious about their liability, their concerns, if they've written, say, nonfiction, something about living people, existing businesses. They're confident about what they wrote in the book, but they won't be in control of changes to the dialogue or plot. Should authors be concerned about that? Is there any sort of liability on there?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, again, perfect segue from my previous point. Like, publishers approach liability kind of differently than film and TV does. When you are physically portraying someone on a screen, you're opening yourself up to different considerations for people living or dead. You absolutely want to make sure as a producer, as a studio, that you are securing the necessary rights. Sometimes you just option an article and that article becomes Top Gun. Sometimes you're optioning an article like the one that became Argo, and whereas Top Gun kind of took the world of flight school, Argo was about 6 individuals whose lives were in jeopardy. and you probably want to make sure that you are legally covered for a film or TV adaptation in a different way than with a publisher. So again, this is where having an entertainment lawyer help you navigate life rights, depictions of living or dead peoples. Are there estates? These are factors that you absolutely have to take into consideration and begin to research early on. You know, Einstein is one of the most globally known people, you know, but also the image of him sticking out his tongue, right? That famous image. Like, the lawyer for the Einstein estate is very strict about how that image gets used or how Einstein is depicted. So you have to pay attention to these kind of issues for film and TV adaptations in a big way, for sure.
If an author is sending out their work to scouts, agents of any kind, what do they send? What are we talking about as far as a synopsis? There's something called a Bible for a TV show.
No. You only send a Bible if you're a screenwriter, and only if you're paid to write the Bible. Don't start writing Bibles on your own. Okay. Bible is a very specific kind of creative content step. Don't write Bibles yet. Focus on your book, focus on getting a rep, focus on getting a media rights rep who's going to help you through the process. If you want to be a screenwriter, then learn screenwriting. And screenwriting for film and screenwriting for TV are different. A Bible is a document that's typically more used for TV, not for film, right? And you get paid to write a Bible. Screenwriters get paid to write Bibles. So don't write one for free if someone's going to pay you for it. You're not approaching scouts typically. You're approaching agents. Scouts are sort of on the periphery, trying to feed off of the flow of information between editors and agents, producers and agents and managers. You're not really going to scouts. You're not trying to get scouts to look at your stuff. Like on my LinkedIn, it says right at the top, "Hi, I'm Eddie Gamarra. Do not send me stuff. I can't look at your stuff for legal reasons. I can't expose myself to the liability of you saying you stole my idea for The Sopranos. Can't do it." You have to go through the proper channels. And the proper channels will tell you what are the right things to send. A full manuscript and a summary are fabulous. It's great to have an author-written summary. 1-2 pages is fabulous. If you're trying to get a book agent, you have to follow the instructions on their own website on how to submit. Follow it to a T. But what I want is, I want just enough to know what's the idea, who's the protagonist, what world do they live in, and is this right for our company? Those are the questions I'm asking as a scout. If I meet an author, I'll tell them this, and they'll bounce one-liners off of me. They'll send me summaries. They'll send me PDFs of their book. But I'm not trying to get you to do free work, like writing a Bible or writing a script on your own. I'm not trying to get you to do that. If you want to do that, go do that under the guidance of your professional team. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. A few miscellaneous questions here at the end. What about live stage rights? Are they included? Sure. Is it off-putting if the rights are retained, or have the books already been licensed for stage production? Sure.
Books that have been exploited in any other format, live stage, merch, video game. Again, this goes back to chain of title. Any kind of previous exploitation of a book is going to complicate a film or TV deal, just by the nature of the fact that there's other parties and other copyrighted iterations. The theater script is its own copyrighted iteration. It's a work that is derivative off of your work. So that work, that play, that derivative work was written by another writer typically. So now that writer's in part of this conversation as well, right? So you as an author, if you think about a pie, your IP is this pie, and you start carving off pieces of that pie, I'm giving the Seattle Children's Theater Company the right to do a stage adaptation of my book, and then I'm partnering with Claire's to do a line of cosmetics based off of my book, and I'm doing a video game on Roblox with a small video game company that my son belongs to. When you begin to exploit your IP in these different ways and start carving out pieces of the pie, that's going to complicate your chain of title by its very nature. But that might be the best strategic thing for you to do financially and creatively. So again, working with your team to build a business plan, a sales strategy around your book IP is essential. And always make sure you have record keeping. Always make sure you have clear chain of title, keep digital copies, keep paper backups. We always need to know when we're acquiring something, they're acquiring everything we need, and you need the support document to back it up. So no friendship deals. Put it on paper, have it signed and notarized.
That makes sense.
That is one of the things that we like to remind people, is that we're here to help authors with the business of writing.
Yes.
You need to be a business person, and you need to
Yes.
understand your rights, and you need to understand what you're agreeing to.
Yes.
And on the business front, somebody mentioned they love the be your own CEO mindset. But how do you have advice for an author who doesn't want to step on the toes of their literary agent? They want to take control, but they don't want to offend.
It's like any healthy relationship. Doesn't matter if it's your spouse, your kid, your boss, your colleague. You need to talk about your wants and needs. You need to talk about your fears. Your rep, when I was a rep, I think I was a good rep in part because I had a PhD in psychoanalysis, and it taught me how to listen to people's anxieties in a different way, right? Like, yes, I'm a salesperson and I have to hustle, I have to sell, I have to be closing deals, but I also have to understand my clients' wants, needs, and fears. If you can't have an honest conversation with your rep, they're not the right rep for you. If they can't give you the market intelligence that you need to develop a business strategy, they're not the right rep for you.
We've got just a couple minutes left. If you can, what are some ballpark numbers that a non-famous author might get in payment for an option?
See that one more time?
So let's say an author is not a big name.
Yeah.
But they are getting an option offered to them. What kinds of numbers are we talking about?
So bear in mind, it's not just about the known quantity of the author. It's about the market. Are there more than one parties bidding on your property? Can you create an auction situation? It's about personal passion for the creative executives in Hollywood. You know, if the executive really wants this project, how does your rep leverage that to your financial benefit? Right. So it's not just about you being well known. It's about these other factors as well. But again, live action TV, live action features, animated TV, animated features all have different sort of general ranges. The general guidance I give to people is across all those four categories, you're typically looking at a 4-figure or a low 5-figure option payment, and you're hopefully looking for a 6-figure purchase price payment. But more than that, I can't get into. I mean, that's every negotiation is unique. But to manage expectations, it's typically 4 figures for an option, low 5 figures for an option, unless there's some heat, unless there's some, urgency or there's some leverage that the negotiator has. So again, you're not making a lot of money. The purchase price can be life-changing for some authors, for sure. But the number of projects that actually get the purchase price is very, very, very slim. 1% of all things optioned actually get made.
Wow. We've also we have a lot of authors who are self-publishing these days, of course. A lot of books are selling very well,
Sure.
but they're outside of the scouting process that you were talking about, where books being submitted and acquired. So is there anything in particular they should know, or are they just looking at representation and getting their work out there?
Look, I think self-published authors can take advantage of 3 resources, right? PW does do reviews of self-published books. There's a whole section for self-published authors. Number 2, in this digital age, direct-to-consumer communication is the norm, right? Colleen Hoover was self-published, but then published in traditional publishers. She's built an entire cottage industry because of her direct-to-consumer communication. Learn how to build a fandom, learn how to talk to your readers, learn how to nurture relationships. You have the power to do that. Traditional publishers have minuscule marketing budgets, and the majority of what budgets there are go towards the lead titles per season. Hollywood marketing is massive. For a feature film that's $100 million, typically they're committing $30, $40, $50 million in marketing alone. That's massive, right? So the direct-to-consumer relationship is where any author, traditional or self-published, is going to find success in nurturing a fan base and an active readership.
Well, we're going to put a pin in it for today. I wanted to say as a reminder that we ask that you, and recommend that you not quote or tweet details from this, because the advice might not apply to one person's situation. So it's in everybody's interest to seek professional advice where needed. And also, we've received many, many dozens of questions that we have not answered today, but don't worry, we look through them afterwards and we'll plan future programming to make sure we address what everyone wants to know. Eddie, Gamarra, thank you so much for being here today. This is really helpful. You've received so many kudos from the audience.
Ah, you make me blush. I haven't had a chance to look at the Q&A chat box, but I've told Cheryl and Johnny that I'm happy to do follow-up. If you are repped, please, have your reps reach out to me if you feel like you have a title that's right for Nickelodeon or Awesomeness, and I'll happily have that conversation with them. Happy to be a resource to the author community, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to share some insights. So thank you very much.
And we are so glad that we gave you the free membership.
Yes. What a nice twist of fate. I love it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you to our audience. Best of luck with everything, everyone. And
Thanks,
we'll see
folks.
you all
Happy
soon.
holidays.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Cheers. Bye.